I'll give a quick introduction to myself and then would love for you guys to introduce yourselves. So my name is Nikita Sachdev, and as I mentioned, I'm based out of Dubai. I run a Web3 PR and marketing agency. That's my bread and butter. But we've been around since 2017. I started my crypto career with Huobi Exchange in Singapore. And since then, we've worked with over 600 clients, Web3 clients, pioneers, governments, multinational corporations, all sorts. And last year, we acquired Cointelegraph, the franchise for Cointelegraph Middle East. And we also produce a show on CNBC Arabia called On the Chain that was hitting over 50 million homes. And that's basically what I do, and I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Wow, what a resume. I'm JP Vega. I'm the CEO of Souq. We're a new capital market trying to coordinate the long tail of retail users through crypto.
My name is Aaron Malone. I'm the co-host of the Crypto 101 podcast and founder of Collective Ventures.
Awesome. So perfect candidates for our panel today to talk about volatility. To start off, I want to talk about the question that everybody has. Everyone questions volatility, and especially now with market conditions, people are doubling down on that argument that volatility is such a bad thing. I want to know your outlook. Is volatility actually a bad thing for digital assets?
I think it's important to tell the truth from the very beginning. The markets are rigged, and it's been like this since the early 1900s. Richard Wyckoff wrote about it in his book, in the 1910s. And what it is market makers are the ones that are controlling things. But there's a good side to that. It's not just bad. Without market makers, which we've seen in the early days of DeFi, you have these giant spreads and no one can come to a deal. And liquidity dries up without them. So it's a necessary quote-unquote evil. And once they run out of supply, they're out of the market, and you see what happens to markets when they're left to people who don't know how to do this stuff. Everything collapses and people get out and prices fall and there's all this turmoil, but there's no such thing as a bad market. There's just a time to buy and there's a time to sell. And I think it's important to look at it through a mature eyes rather than an emotional state of where your current holdings are valued. And if you understand that this cycle continues on and on, then you just kind of know what to do. But without that volatility, there are no markets in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why, like, this bear market, in a way, I look at the cup as half full, that it's really wiped out a lot of the shit coins, and volatility has slowed down because there's not so many pump and dumps in the market. There's not so much, as you said, manipulation. So do you like bear markets? Are they favorable for what you guys do?
Bear markets are the time to build in this space. And that's when you see the people who really believe in what they're doing and they're building for a better future. And they're much more tech focused and impact focused than profits. But you need time to plant the seeds into the ground and let them mature before the harvest. And that's what the bear market is in our space.
So when projects are building, what do investors do?
Look, I think the unique thing about crypto is concepts, passions, projects come into the public spotlight much earlier in their life cycle. So volatility will always be inherent. Right now, we're in a cycle where there's a lot of volatility, capital leaves, less investment, less projects, more volatility, and it spins. But the unique thing about crypto is it's programmable money, and there's better ways that we can use the composable nature of finance and smart contracts to build tools that can better address volatility. And that's what I think is kind of our pathway to address something that is always going to be an intrinsic characteristic of the market. And I think investors can play a larger role in helping shape the future or identifying that, like, volatility is a problem, and how can we support companies that are addressing that. And over time, I think that's going to unlock something really unique about crypto, which is you can program your money to do things that otherwise would require human actors in a much more efficient manner. And there's a lot that we can unearth just with that innovation. And I think that's our way out of the system.
And I think regulation will play a very big part in kind of taking care of volatility as well. With all the drama happening around the SEC this week, Coinbase suing the SEC, Chamath Palihapitiya, I can never say his last name, said that that crypto is dead in America. What are your thoughts with which regions will bypass, which regions will triumph and get ahead of the race of being the Web3 hub? Because I live in Dubai, and Dubai is trying to so hard to, it's almost already being the new Silicon Valley of Web3.
I think, the way I look at it is crypto's a way to coordinate humans. And right now, there's a need in, for example, Latin America, which is one of the markets that we're focused in. There's low trust in governments, high inflation, really poor political landscape. And they're already using crypto as a great form of remittance to park money in an asset that's, one, outside of the system, but two, isn't subject to the same inflation risk. That represents a really amazing use case that's already pulling people in. So I really do think emerging economies have a great opportunity to go from this idea where, we're pushing tokens, we're pushing things on people, to the features and the benefits are pulling them into the ecosystem.
And to add to that, for the first time, Latin America is going to have a credit system where bad actors have made credit all but impossible to get. Now having on-chain reputation will basically, for the first time in many people's lives, allow them to take out a business loan or have some kind of, emergency fund where they don't have it before.
It's interesting you say that because part of my company, Luna Media Corp, we have a small foundation where we educate girls in the slums of India. My parents are originally Indian. So I was there 2 weeks ago in the slums, like I'm talking rats and no tap water, like horrid conditions. And we saw a man selling cotton candy on a stick for I think it was 1 cent a bag. And so we bought 20 bags to distribute to the kids in the slums. And he whipped out his phone, pulled out a QR code, and he was like, "Can you GPay me?" Can you believe that, in the slums? I mean, and that's what I really loved. What you said about emerging countries. I see that, like in India, everybody is using GPay, even like the small rickshaw drivers. Like, it is so forward thinking. And then you come to the States, and I was at Quiznos yesterday trying to buy a drink, and she didn't even know what Apple Pay was. I was like, that is, beyond comprehension for me.
Yeah, we more or less have a system that works here, so we'll probably be the last to adopt it as users. But despite everything you're seeing in the news, the U.S. is actually very on board with crypto. It is just very much kept secret, blatantly lied about. But if you attend conferences like Consensus or Money 2020, you'll see every major institution's already there, either already in the game or trying to figure it out. I met the head of digital assets of Bank of America at Money 2020. And I said, "Oh, something like you exists, number one. And two, what are you waiting for?" And he's like, "Oh, we're just waiting for the right political climate for new regulations to drop that already exist." And I went, boom, mind blown.
So that's what I mean. Like, every multinational organization has already implemented the technology behind crypto, blockchain, and is looking to implement cryptocurrency. Like Visa now is started a new division that's looking to implement stablecoin payments, which is fantastic. But at the end of the day, none of it is possible unless the SEC kind of comes up with a strong regulatory framework. And just last week, Gary Gensler again shot down even the thought of crypto. And to be honest, it's slowing America down a little bit, in my opinion.
That's the point. That's the exact point, is to slow things down so the incumbents can get their grubby little fingers in it, figure out how to make money, and participate so they're not left behind.
I think there's a major opportunity there where what's unique about crypto is you can go Main Street first. You can go from someone selling in an emerging market and onboard them into the system. And there's a lot of power in that coordination that just isn't possible in any other financial system. And so when I hear a lot about institutions or people building products for institutions, I think it kind of misses the broader point where there's already product market fit, there's a need. Fiat in a lot of countries is just a poor form of value transfer. And that's a problem that crypto's really good at solving: payments. You can send a stablecoin denominated transaction to anyone in 12 seconds. Any amount, low fees. It's a great product market fit. And the people that are going to take advantage of that aren't institutions. It's the everyday person that is looking to move money around, especially when I, for example, send money quite often to family in Latin America, and 16% of it gets eaten up. But with remittance, it's just instant, and they can withdraw it, they can use it, they can send it. They're sometimes not even converting it into fiat.
Yeah, so remittance with no volatility is a fantastic way of sending payments through, and then that's why you have stable coins. But how stable are stable coins? Because I was affected by Luna Terra. Unfortunately, my company name is also Luna PR. Nothing to do with Luna Terra. I really thought about the rebrand, but I've been around longer than them. So, but yeah, I was affected by UST. I'm sure a lot of you guys were out here as well. And then, every time there is some kind of turbulence in the market, USDC depegs and USDT depegs. How stable are stable coins?
I think that volatility is inversely correlated to liquidity. And if you have something that is more liquid, the more likely it is to be stable. And there's many of these cross-border payment solutions that are designed to do just that. Even if they're not literally stable coins, things like XRP, XLM, etc., have huge supplies, gigantic market-making relationships. So the receiver on the other end is going to get more or less the same value that the sender intended to give to them. So as far as stable coins go, it's only stable because the market believes it's redeemable.
Yeah, I think liquidity is a great thing to bring up. What are the assets backing the stablecoin? Number one, but two, what is the market confidence? Fiat isn't backed by anything, but it has market confidence and deep liquidity, and that's an important component in the psychology of, okay, I know that this asset is liquid, that it has representation, and therefore I'm going to wait before I evacuate in a way that is artificially deflating the pricing, even though that the assets are there. There's a reserve.
To touch more on what you were talking about with UST collapsing and everyone being scared out of algorithmic stablecoins, I got to thinking though, if you have a fiat-backed stablecoin 1-to-1 where you've got this money in the bank, what is the bank then doing with all that money that they have in their deposits? They're lending it back out and they're putting it into other things. So your fiat-backed stablecoins are actually backed by less than the algorithmic-backed stablecoins. So what the fuck are we doing?
I never thought of that. That's actually scary, come to think about it, because Abu Dhabi is looking to, it's CBDCs, right? Like Abu Dhabi is looking to launch one, and everyone's super excited about it. But that's a very valid point. So let's touch base on more assets, like gold. Recently hit its all-time one-year high. And Bitcoin, this is the best January. Well, we saw the best January for Bitcoin. The Bitcoin is, just hit 30K today again. Do you think Bitcoin and gold are now more correlated than Bitcoin and U.S. stocks?
Maybe in the short term. I think confidence in the U.S. dollar is at an all-time low. And people are going to be fleeing to whatever they can get their hands on that they know is not about to hyperinflate and lose continued world dominance. So I think gold and Bitcoin make sense. They're two of the easiest things that people are familiar with and know how to buy. They're a little bit more liquid than real estate, and who knows what's going to happen there because the real estate bubble, at least in the U.S., hasn't really burst in a lot of places. So right now, it's really the most uncertain time since the Great Depression, and we've had plumbing and electricity in our homes.
So do you think Bitcoin is seen as a safe haven asset?
To anyone who understands it, yes. To many who don't, maybe they're playing with it. But I still think, at an earlier panel they mentioned there's only just over 400 million wallets, about 5% of the population. So there's still a huge missing gap there of education that needs to be done.
It's a psychology thing. It's evolving into the psychology where this is a place to park money. And I think as that propagates through the supply chain of mines, I think you're going to see it start to mimic gold more, but I don't think we're there yet. What's driving the price of Bitcoin right now, I think, is losing confidence in some other things, but also it's massively speculated. And the main product market fit with Bitcoin is perps and speculation.
Looking back historically, so when we look at the rise of the internet days, people often compare the internet boom to Web3. So looking back, what can we learn, and do you see it comparable? And if you do, where do you think this Web3 market is going to go?
Web3 hasn't even begun yet. I've talked to maybe 500 developers through the podcast, and as I ask them what they're building in Web3 and what their vision is for Web3, I realize no one who's even building it truly understands where it's going to go. But through the fog, my interpretation so far of listening to all these pieces, if you put them together and you have Bitcoin as sound money, Web3 is sound cash flow. Because what it does is it takes all these giant balance sheets that are locked up in Web 2, that's taking money from every community in the world, the Netflixes, the Amazon Primes, the Amazon Web Services, everything there. And if these services are recreated in Web 3 in a way that everyone gets to share in the profit and everyone gets to share in the responsibility and share the resources to make these things happen, now all of a sudden, instead of these giant looming rain clouds overhead over a huge drought dying land, you have liquidity again. And liquidity is health. It's circulation. That's what makes the body healthy. That's what makes economies healthy. And that's the true end game to Web3 if it's built right. But less than 1% of Web3 components have these tokenomic values or these intentions. So there's still a lot of awareness and coordination that needs to be done in order to reach that goal.
And how do you think we'll get there? What can we do to increase that awareness?
I'm going on a lecture tour to talk about it. So today's day one.
I think when it comes to where crypto's at, and
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. There we go.
when it comes to where crypto's going and what happened with Web 2, the first internet boom, it comes down to what are people's incentives and what are their passions. And I think a challenging thing is there's a massive financial incentive, and you see it bringing out some of the worst things in human behavior. And what I'm hoping is that there'll be more mission-driven, oriented projects that can develop a community and they can coordinate it through crypto. And ultimately, I think that's the best way that we can avoid some of the bubble and the speculation, because naturally humans are about incentives. And when they're hyper-financialized incentives, you're going to see bad actors. But the only way that we can combat that is with people that are mission-driven, oriented, and trying to create real value. A lot of what's happening in DeFi and crypto, the yield's not real. It's inflationary, and we have to understand that like economic value isn't created that way. We have to deliver value within the system, but also make it compatible that when you take value out of the system, it's able to continue creating value. And I think that's something that's kind of missing right now. I think that DeFi needs to integrate with more traditional yield. And you touched on composability, which I think is a really great property. You know, if I own things in Robinhood, it's stuck in their database. I can't go and get leverage. I can't use it as collateral in other systems. And that's a really great use case for crypto and for the programmability aspect.
So Standard Chartered said earlier this week that they predict Bitcoin going to 100K by the end of 2024. What are your thoughts? Do you agree or disagree?
If Bitcoin continues on its 4-year halving cycles and its bull run cycles, then I think 100K is probably a minimum that we would see.
I think Bitcoin's a risk asset, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but it needs to be part of a balanced portfolio. So I have exposure to Bitcoin, but it's not my only thing to generate or try and create wealth.
In your opinion, what percentage of one's portfolio should be cryptocurrencies, and then what percentage of one's cryptocurrency portfolio should be Bitcoin? In your opinion, not financial advice.
In my personal experience, I think that Bitcoin is the least volatile of the assets, and so I think it should make up a majority of a position. And I think things that I look at it from a TVL equation, like what actually has money locked in and use like a market capitalization risk. But I think the long tail of assets I try and avoid. I don't think those should be put in the average consumer portfolio. I think it's like
what about
Ethereum,
NFTs?
Bitcoin. If it's pictures and things like that, I don't think it makes sense. But if it represents some underlying financial value that has a NAV, and that is outside of just like pure speculation, maybe there's a component of speculation in it as with any asset, then it makes sense. But that doesn't exist yet.
Very well said. Very diplomatic. What about you?
I would say it depends if you're trying to retain wealth or grow wealth. If you are a debt slave working for minimum wage, you're going to have to take much greater risks than someone who's already a multimillionaire and just trying to keep their value. If you're trying to keep your value, maybe you're 50% in Bitcoin. and sprinkled with other top altcoins and things that have proven themselves over time, and that you're certain or fairly certain they're not going to go to zero, which is hard to say. I can't. I don't need a second hand to name how many coins I think are going to be around in 10 years from now. It's just too soon, and we've seen too many things come and go.
Technology is a
for better or
power
worse.
law, though. So even
Yeah.
if something has, like an alt-01 has a lot of forward value, 1,000x or something like that, at the end of the day, technology is a power law. And whatever captures the most liquidity is going to retain it. It's a race to liquidity at the layer 1, at the layer 2, at the DeFi, and anything in finance. So I think that we should avoid a lot of these other long-tail speculation assets. It just doesn't make sense. And it's not working out for anyone. And I think that's part of some of the grift that we see right now is the rotation into those types of things to pump bags.
Fortunately, we're seeing a lot more fundamental value in newer projects that are coming out over the last couple of years. More mission-driven founders like what you were talking about, finding mission-driven investors that aren't there just to dump their tokens as soon as they're vested, but that are really trying to build solutions for humanity. And I see more and more of that as I travel the world. So I am excited for new coins to come out yet, but nothing I can really say with a lot of confidence. You need to go out and get exposure to this. Not yet.
Likewise, yeah, same. At our PR agency, we're seeing a lot more companies come our way that have stronger fundamentals. We were also no more meme coins at all. we used to get so many last year during.
You don't like sushi anymore?
sushi swap.
Right.
Not a meme coin, but yeah, definitely have had some issues with their recent $3 million hack. Was it? Very fishy.
But
yeah, very fishy. Yeah. But no, totally agree with you. A lot more quality is coming through, and that's why I think bear markets are sometimes fantastic. And if you're sustaining through the bear market, then you're here to stay. That's all that's important. Any final things to say before I wrap this up? No?
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, that wraps up. That wraps our panel discussion up. Thank you so much. And I think we have a question.
Sir?
Okay.
Where can the audience find you and if we want to continue to follow you?
That's a good question. I should have asked you that.
Oh, you can follow the Crypto 101 podcast for my rants and ravings, or follow our social media at Crypto 101 Pod on Twitter. And you, sir?
You can find me on Twitter at I am JP Vega.
And you can also find me on Twitter at Nikki Chain, Niki Chain. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank all of you for listening.